In the year 1924, a man was arrested in Hanover, charged with the murder of at least 24 young men. It was the Butcher of Hannover, Fritz Haarmann. Dive into one of the most horrifying crimes in German history. Hanover, the small patch of earth where Fritz Haarmann was born in 1879, was shaped by the ups and downs of life at that time. The environment in which he grew up was a blend of dreams and difficulties that paved the way for his future. Fritz's home was not an opulent backdrop, but rather a setting characterized by modest circumstances. The early loss of his father and his mother's efforts to make the most of the available resources laid the foundation for what was yet to come. The streets of Hanover became Fritz's playground, a place of childhood adventures and explorations. Amidst the dust and sounds of the city, he experienced his own little stories that briefly allowed him to forget the worries of the world. The first friendships Fritz forged became the roots of his world. Every friend, every connection contributed to shaping his understanding of relationships and bonds. These invisible ties would later play a significant role in his development. Like many young people, Fritz Haarmann also harbored dreams of a better future in his youth. The prospect of what could come next gleamed like a distant light at the end of a long tunnel. These dreams became an anchor that held him steady in times of uncertainty. In this section, we delve into the chilling depths of Fritz Haarmann's crimes. Please be aware that the following descriptions are extremely explicit and disturbing. Jürgen was lured into Haarmann's apartment, unsuspecting and unaware. However, a nightmare awaited him there, from which there was no escape. Haarmann tortured and strangled Jürgen in a cruel manner. The hallway of his apartment echoed with Jürgen's screams, overshadowed by Haarmann's murderous desire. A young man who was only at the beginning of his life met a terrible and brutal end. Fritz entered Haarmann's dark realm, unaware of the horror that awaited him. In the confined spaces of his apartment, Fritz became the plaything of Haarmann's sadistic fantasies. Moans of despair filled the air as Haarmann succumbed to his ominous urges. The traces of brutality Fritz endured are a painful reminder of how deeply darkness can penetrate a person's soul. Willie found his way into Haarmann's deadly trap. In the cramped apartment, he experienced a nightmare come to life. Hours of horror followed as Haarmann stripped Willie of his humanity and shattered his soul. The agonizing screams of Willie are a grim testament to the depths that can lie within a person. The fate of Friedel followed the same cruel path. Haarmann drew her into his apartment, where she was subjected to unspeakable agony. Hours of suffering, fear, and terror marked Friedel's final moments. Haarmann not only debased her body but also robbed her of her dignity and peace. Fritz Haarmann's early years were marked by poverty, emotional neglect, and an unstable family situation. Born in 1879 in Hanover, he was confronted with life's challenges from the very beginning. The loss of his father and difficult financial circumstances laid the foundation for a challenging childhood. Experts point out that such early experiences can have long-term effects on behavior and personality. Haarmann's early contacts with criminals and his involvement in Hanover's underworld may have played a role in shaping his future criminal activities. Experts emphasize that the social environment in which someone grows up and operates can have a significant influence on their behavior. Repeated exposure to crime and violence could have contributed to shifting his moral boundaries and lowering his inhibitions for unethical behavior. Haarmann was a master of deception. While appearing friendly and harmless on the outside, he simultaneously committed heinous crimes. Psychologists call this the mask of normalcy, the ability to maintain a normal appearance while harboring a sinister darkness within. Haarmann's perceived harmlessness helped him gain the trust of his victims and lure them into his deadly trap. His drive for power and control could have been a significant motive for his crimes. Experts suggest that many serial killers feel a need for dominance over others and use violence as a means to exert that control. Haarmann's sadistic actions, sexual assaults, and brutal murders could indicate a horrifying satisfaction of this perverse desire. The city of Hanover was gripped by concern as an alarming number of young men disappeared in mysterious circumstances. A wave of unease swept through the community as more and more families reported missing loved ones. The puzzle of the vanished men raised urgent questions that demanded answers. The police pulled out all the stops to uncover the truth behind the disappearances. A dedicated team of investigators was assembled to shed light on the darkness. Relatives, friends, and witnesses were questioned to reconstruct the last known whereabouts of the missing individuals. Every tiny piece of information was meticulously pursued, hoping to clarify the fate of the young men. Over time, the detectives noticed striking similarities among the victims. They were similar in age, appearance, and life circumstances. But most notably, the last contacts of some of the missing led to a certain Fritz Haarmann. This unexpected lead led to Haarmann being scrutinized, and the investigators' focus on him grew stronger. Eventually, the police obtained permission to search Haarmann's apartment. The sight that greeted them was overwhelming. In the gloomy apartment, they found photos of the missing men, personal items, and clothing that seemed to tell a grim story. It was as if the apartment itself was a dark diary of Fritz Haarmann's crimes, and the investigators realized they had stumbled upon a disturbing truth. The investigators spared no effort to confront Haarmann and bring the truth to light. In a nerve-wracking interrogation, they presented him with the evidence and the eerie connections to the missing individuals. Haarmann initially tried to profess his innocence, but the investigators steadfastly clung to the facts. Under the pressure of the evidence, Haarmann began to waver. And it was clear he was at a turning point. Under mounting pressure and overwhelmed by the evidence, Haarmann finally broke down. The floodgates opened, and he confessed to the horrific crimes he had committed. His voice trembled as he revealed the gruesome details of his deeds. The investigators had finally brought the truth to light, and the dark story of Fritz Haarmann began to unfold. The courtroom became the stage for a weighty conflict between the law and a shocking series of crimes. Here, before the eyes of the public, Fritz Haarmann was to be held accountable for his deeds. Lawyers, judges, jurors, and the victims' families gathered in anticipation of a verdict that would reflect the tragedy and suffering caused by Haarmann. As the prosecution began, photos of the victims, personal items, and detailed reports of the crimes were presented. The evidence painted a grim picture of Haarmann's atrocities and ignited emotions in the courtroom. People listened intently, trying to comprehend the extent of the horrors committed by Haarmann. The victims' relatives stood before the court to tell the stories of their lost loved ones. Their poignant testimonies gave the victims a human identity and lent painful reality to the tragedy. Through their words, the victims became more than just names on a list of the missing. Their pain and losses were palpable in every sentence. Haarmann's defense attorneys sought to provide insight into the defendant's troubled psyche. They shed light on his difficult childhood and argued that his actions were driven by personal demons. In a desperate attempt to evoke understanding, they revealed the dark corners of Haarmann's psyche. However, the accusations and evidence from the prosecution were overwhelming. During cross-examination, the defense aimed to undermine the credibility of the prosecution's witnesses and evidence. They posed questions that targeted doubt and attempted to portray Haarmann's actions in a milder light. However, the prosecution countered with compelling arguments, keeping the focus on the terrible truth that needed to be brought to light. After all the evidence was presented and witness testimonies were heard, the jury retired to determine Fritz Haarmann's fate. The tension in the room was palpable as society awaited the verdict. When the jury returned and announced the verdict, guilty, Fritz Haarmann was sentenced to life imprisonment. Society could breathe a sigh of relief that justice had been served, yet the weight of the truth that had come to light was keenly felt. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it and don't want to miss any future videos, please subscribe. Your support means a lot and helps me tremendously.